These are challenging times. Singapore talked about the possibility of harsher penalties. Could you elaborate on that?
Well, good morning. Well, we have been advising companies for some time now to implement work-from-home measures. This is really critical if we are to be successful in safe distancing measures. And workplaces are a very important part of the safe distancing measures. What we have found is that a number of companies have done exceedingly well, and the telecommuting measures have helped almost 80%, some even 100% of their staff work from home. However, on an overall basis, in the central business district, as of yesterday, it was still just about 40% work from home. This is not nearly as far as we need it to go. And we want to get the message out to companies that it is also in your own interest to try and make sure that you minimize human contact, especially at the workplaces. So as far as possible, please help your employees to work from home. 100% is going to be better than 80%, and 80% is going to be better than 60%. So to the extent possible, please try and work from home. Now, we understand not everyone is going to be able to do so. So, of course, there's going to be a measure of calibration and assessment when we interact with the companies. We are not going to just issue a stop work order without considering the specific circumstances. So that is the principle that we will operate on. But really, it is in the company's own interest, and it is a necessary measure if we are going to succeed in safe distancing.
But you talked about harsher penalties. What are we looking at? Are we looking at fines? And if so, how much are we looking at?
Well, the regulations are being worked out, and in good time we will be able to tell you. At the moment, what we have been doing is to adopt a two-pronged approach. Whilst we are doing inspections, we also want to give the companies some advice on what they can do. So, for example, we know that in certain instances, really working from home is not going to be feasible. For example, if you are in a manufacturing company, you have production lines, or you have equipment with a security measures that your staff are not going to be able to access from home. What can you do? Well, there are two main things. One is that even if the staff have to come into work, then staggering the work hours, staggering the arrival times, staggering the departure times, that's going to help a lot. You don't really want people congregating at the lift lobbies or all of them taking public transport at the same time. That's one thing. Staggered work hours, staggered arrival, staggered departures. The second thing that is also very important is that at the workplace, between the workstations, to the extent possible, introduce also safe distancing. Keep people at least a meter apart and ensure that if they have to interact with one another, they maintain a certain safe distance from each other.
Minister Teo, what kind of job losses are you looking at this year, bearing in mind that a recession is looming? Well,
you know, this is the $6 million question. Everybody would like to have the answer to it. But let me give you a perspective and how this might compare to two previous very severe downturns that we've had to deal with. I mean, if you look at SARS, it was in 2003, and the impact was really to the tourism, the hospitality, and to some extent the aviation sector. And then if you think about what it is today, this is not only a public health crisis, but the implementation of widespread safe distancing measures means that a lot of companies are impacted, not only those in the sectors such as tourism, hospitality, and aviation. So it's much more broad-based. And thinking about how interconnectedness of supply chains, then we begin to appreciate the scale and the magnitude of the impact. The second is that when we were looking at the global financial crisis, I do recall that in the year 2009, at the beginning of 2009, the International Labour Organization at that time had looked, at the projections, and they thought that in 2009 worldwide, I'm not talking about Singapore, worldwide, we were looking at potentially 100 or 50 million job losses. And at that time, the economists in Singapore thought that for the year 2009, we would see perhaps 100,000 job losses. Now, that is just a reference point that we just
Minister
keep in mind.
let me just interject here. Minister Teo, if you take a look at Singapore's jobless rate, it's always hovered at about 2%. Can we possibly double that, given the difficulties?
Well, if our measures work, we certainly hope to minimize retrenchments. If you look at the way in which our budgets have been packaged, a lot of the help goes towards the employers, and we have a long-standing philosophy where what we really want to do is rally everyone together. Instead of cutting jobs to save costs, really we should be cutting costs to save jobs. That is really what we're all working towards. Minimize retrenchments, minimize job losses. So a big part of the resilience budget goes to job support, 25% of a person's salary for 9 months. And you add on top of that a lot of support for companies to use training schemes where there is also absentee payroll, which will also help them to sustain the wage costs during this period.
Minister Teo, are foreign workers at risk? I mean, some companies are worried that they won't be able to hire enough foreign workers.
Well, we are in a rather unusual situation. Because of the lockdowns that have been implemented by some other countries, as well as travel restrictions, what it means to these companies that even if they have a need for the workers, they may not be able to bring on board a good enough number anytime soon. So what we are noticing is that whereas in a normal year you might have more cancellations of work passes on a regular basis, I think companies are re-evaluating their positions. Instead of asking their existing employees to go, whether they are local or they are foreign, they might implement measures to try and keep these workers for a bit longer until the situation stabilizes and they have a better sense of what to expect.
Just one question before you go. We have foreign workers pretty much stuck in the country. What happens to them if there is no more support from the government?
Do you mean they are stuck in Singapore or they are stuck elsewhere?
Stuck in Singapore.
I'm not sure I understand you completely. To say that they are stuck in Singapore, they are no longer with a job?
Minister.
The migrant workers, as long as they are in Singapore, they will still be employed. And if, for some reason, their employers have asked them to go, we have put in place another measure, and that is working with the Singapore Business Federation to enable these workers to transfer to other employers who may still have a need. So we are facilitating that process. And if anyone should have difficulties, they can approach Ministry of Manpower. They can also approach the Migrant Workers Center for assistance.